Welcome to Shadow of Truth, and today is Monday, August the 8th, 2016, and your hosts are Dave Kranzler from InvestmentResearchDynamics.com and Rory Hall from thedailycoin.org, and we have a quick market update for you, and we certainly appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much. Saw that Bloomberg this morning actually reported on the Silk Road.
Oh, they did?
Yep,
sure did. See that.
And I couldn't hardly believe it. So I had to write about it. Gave my own little spin on what they were saying.
What did Bloomberg have to say about the Silk Road?
Well, it's more of what they didn't say and a couple of things that they did point out. The one thing that they did point out, which was really interesting to me anyway, is that the Silk Road touches 64 countries, 4.4 billion people, and around 40% of the global economy, these are numbers, these are a little bit more solid numbers than the ones that you and I and various other people have discussed over the past year and a half, 2 years now, I guess. 4.4 billion people out of 7 billion, that's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
40% of the global economy. And my take on it is that they're setting the table. This is another layer of them setting the table for World War, because while this article is kind of flowery and doesn't really say a whole lot.
Not surprising.
Yeah, exactly. But it kind of points in the direction of these are the bad guys. Look at how much of the economy they're going to be taking up. Look at how many people they're affecting. We can't have that. That's kind of my take on it. And the other thing is of course they never ever mention gold. But the other interesting fact that they point out, or they claim as to being a fact, is that it's going to take between 30 and 40 years for this whole thing to unfold and to come into fruition. I disagree with that completely, because what they failed to mention is the fact that the first leg of the railway system for the new Silk Road, the One Belt, One Road project, is already in place. It's already operational. And that's the line, the railway between central China and Tehran, Iran. So that launched back in February. And the fact that Kazakhstan has already been in talks with the Shanghai Gold Exchange regarding gold, how they're going to integrate gold as payment along the new Silk Road. Of course, they never mentioned that. So you've got all of these. But I just thought that it was interesting that with everything that's in the background, as far as the South China Sea and the neocons poking the dragon in the eye, been poking the bear in the eye for well over a year now, all of those things. And now all of a sudden they're going to start reporting on the new Silk Road.
Right, but in a way that sounds like it really sort of minimized what is really going on with the Silk Road.
Yeah, they're definitely downplaying it.
Yeah.
You know, this is going to be 30 years, 40 years from now. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. You know, but that's just not true. Simply not true. When you're talking about a project that touches well over 50% of the global population, somebody better be paying attention. But I thought that was my thing from this morning. I thought that was interesting that mainstream media is finally reporting on something that we've been covering for quite some time.
Yes, I agree. It's well, you know, I think at a point they kind of have to, because enough people know that this is out there and it's a factor, and the Western propaganda, you know, in order to maintain any kind of shred of credibility on their their misinformation and disinformation that they report, they can't ignore white elephants in the room. And for the neocons and the one world, one government, Western elitists, the Silk Road is a white elephant. there's nothing they can do to stop it short of starting World War III, which is where I think we're headed with this.
And I also find it interesting that they're reporting on this in light of the fact that China is going to begin releasing these M-SDRs that you and I talked about last week, this M-SDR bond that they're going to issue through China with the blessing of the IMF.
When are they doing their first issue?
Well, it's supposed to be out at the end of this month, and we'll see if that actually happens. I mean, I don't know that it's going to actually take place at the end of this month, but it's definitely on the table, and it is definitely happening.
Be interesting to see how, again, if China's timing on this is supposed to be the end of the month or whatever, I wouldn't be surprised to see it get deferred for whatever reason. It seems like everything that they plan on rolling out tends to get deferred a little bit longer, but it eventually happens. So it will be interesting to see how this bond issue goes and who plays it.
Yeah, that's the reason I said that I'm not 100% sold on it being rolled out at the end of this month because of their past record. It tends to take them a little bit longer to make a move than what they actually say.
And it could be maybe they put a date on it that's sooner than they intend, just to let the world know they're serious.
That could be as well, and that would make sense also. So,
I wanted to, if we're done with that, I kind of wanted to jump into Friday's employment report because to me it was actually just, it didn't border on idiotic. It was idiotic. It kills me how educated people can get on financial media TV and look the camera straight in the eye and talk about the numbers the headline numbers as if those numbers are even remotely real. I mean, it'd be getting on TV and on financial TV and having a conversation about, whether or not Harry Potter is, Harry Potter's real. It really happened.
His little wand makes magic.
Yeah, I mean it's insanity. And I came across a report. There's a daily report called the King Report that's put out by M. Ramsey King Securities, and it's a great recap of typically the day before economic and market activity, and a lot of times they dig up information that you might not find on Zero Hedge or some of the other alternative media blog sites. And they led off this morning with the fact that so the headline numbers that get reported and everyone dissects and debates and discusses, those are adjusted, they're seasonally adjusted numbers. And Zero Hedge had an article, and I thought they didn't do a great job explaining what the seasonal adjustment was all about, but they pointed it out and said this was just a massive seasonal adjustment that took the unadjusted number and turned it into Jack and the Beanstalk. So but you can actually go if you dig deep enough into the government's own reports, they show their unadjusted numbers. And as it turns out, on a not seasonally adjusted basis, based on Census Bureau surveys, 1.03 million jobs were lost in July. Now, to put that in context, July 2015, 943,000 jobs were lost in July. So there's certainly some sort of seasonal aspect to employment. Okay, so you had 943,000 jobs not seasonally adjusted lost in July 2015. You had 1,030,000 not seasonally adjusted jobs lost in July 2016. Now, for me, the significance of that is that trend tells me that the actual employment situation is deteriorating in this country, which makes sense when you look at all the other correlating data. So, for instance, I went over these numbers in my short seller journal that was released yesterday. And so if you look at the construction report for June that was released last Monday, it showed an unexpected decline of 0.6%.
Oh my God, that's
construction spending, yeah. Okay, and that was it's declined every month since March. So construction spending has been declining. Single-family housing construction fell 0.4%. Non-housing construction spending plunged 1.3%. I mean, that's a huge drop month to month in construction spending. And year over year, construction spending was down 4.5% in June, so versus June 2015. And in May, the construction spending was down 10.4% year over year because they revised May's number down a little bit.
Wow.
So, I mean, it basically tells you that the construction industry is contracting. And yet, in Friday's non-farm payroll report, the government, when you look at the line item of which industry sectors lost or gained jobs, the government's reporting that the construction industry produced 9,000 jobs in July. Now, how is that possible if spending's been declining 4 months in a row? Sorry, bad number.
Yeah, but 9,000 jobs, that's nothing when you're talking about 320 million people, and somewhere around 100 million people working, if not more than 100 million, are supposed to be working or should be working.
Correct,
right?
But if anything, the construction industry they cut jobs, and that's what shows up in that not seasonally adjusted number of over 1 million jobs lost in July. The other thing is we know that Wall Street banks have been cutting like crazy. I mean, there's like new layoffs announced every week at the big banks. Yet, miraculously, the government reported that in July, Wall Street jobs increased by 18,000. But it gets better because now restaurant spending has been flattening out, and it actually started declining.
Yep.
For the first time in many years. And I think that was for the second quarter. Restaurant sales declined for the second quarter. And because it's reported on a quarterly basis, the government's claiming that 45,000 jobs were created in leisure and hospitality in July.
That's incredible.
I mean, it's amazing. So, it just goes to show you how absurd it is that they report these. It's propaganda. It's
exactly.
The payroll report's probably the biggest piece. That and GDP and inflation are the biggest pieces of propaganda put out by the government. That's not related to the military. And then the S&P pops 18 points on Friday on a totally fictitious number. I mean, it just tells you how insane our system has become. And I think that this entire country has gone so far down into Orwell's 1984 dystopic vision that, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse until the whole thing collapses. And meanwhile, the whole way down, we're going to be told everything's getting better.
It's getting better, Dave. As soon as you start using the proper accounting, the non-GAAP, Dave, you got to look at the non-GAAP and start, work your way from that point. I know that accounting doesn't really affect or have anything to do with the unemployment, but it's just a fudge factor. You have to use the same type of fudge factor. Just make it up.
Yep.
You got to get with the program. I keep telling you that.
JMIU. Just make it up.
Exactly.
Maybe that'll be the title of our podcast today.
Might as well. I mean, it's all just like you said. It's become so Orwellian at this point. It's just unbelievable that people actually wait for those numbers to be published on the first Friday of the month, and then they respond to them as if they have any kind of relation to reality at all, when they don't. They have nothing to do with reality. And that goes to, for me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that just proves without question, didn't the S&P 500, it went up, what did you say, 18 points or something?
Yeah.
Doesn't that prove that the retail investor has nothing to do with the market, and that it's all high frequency trading algorithms, and those numbers and those headlines are put out there for the specific purpose of generating that type of reaction by these computers?
That's correct. That's correct. The whole pop in the S&P happened in the futures market before the cash market opened.
Well,
before the NYSE opened, and then the NYSE basically flatlined the entire trading day.
Well, they had already achieved their goal.
Right. Exactly. So. And it also, that 18-point pop saved the S&P from closing down on the week once again.
How convenient.
Right. It's all different forms of propaganda. Prop up the stock market, make the S&P and the Dow look good. It doesn't matter what's going on beneath the surface. There's plenty of stocks that are hitting 52-week lows. But as long as everyone sees the S&P's going up, everything's fine.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
Well, that's all I got for today. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good to go, Dave. I think that I've had just about all the laughter I can take for one day. Oh, well, I guess we'll pick it up on Thursday and see where we stand.
That sounds good to me. Actually, I'm going to be out of town on Thursday. There's a chance I might be able to record something, but I'll let you know as we get closer.
All right. Well, either way, we'll pick it up in just a few days.
Sounds good.
All right, buddy.